This is a lesson video for my arrangement of Concerning Hobbits. I wanted to make a little lesson video because I did design the tab to be easy, but there are a few tricky bits, and I think it still can be an easy arrangement if you have a few tips on how to handle some of those tricky parts. So I've got the tab in front of me. The tab's not perfect, so I'll just point out a few things in it, but if you work from the tab and watch this video, you should be able to get it. So right away, I'm using a hammer-on technique to get the first two notes fast enough with a pick. I did design this to be played with a pick, but you could certainly use your fingers. It's just that there's a lot of five-note chords, so you'd have to either use your thumb to swipe more than one string at a time or use 5 fingers. So if you're using a pick, you could follow exactly what I'm doing. If you're using your fingers, you'll have to use a little bit of your imagination. But at the beginning, I do this hammer on. And then the way I grab this G chord is with my ring and index finger, like that. It makes the rest of it more possible. If you want, you can use your third and second finger for that chord. It's just that for me, that reach is not as easy as doing this. So basically, all those second frets on the G string there, all going to be handled by my middle finger, and that G chord I'm going to play with my first and third finger. So that gets me through the first part. Just continue holding that G chord until you get to a C. Just form a C chord, and then while holding it for as long as you can, you maneuver around for the rest of the notes. Now this G chord I'm going to play with a more typical fingering, 3 and 2. It's a D/F sharp chord. And then I'm going to essentially do the same thing. Right here I'm going to do a hammer on. Go back to my strange G fingering, and then just softly play this little bass line. Because it's not a main feature, it's just a background accompaniment figure here. And then I just continue with this fingering. I'm gonna do a hammer on. Okay, now here's a discrepancy in the tab. I used to do this. I put in that trill. The way I do it with a pick is I drag all the way to my B string while holding this chord, and then I'm going to play open E and come back to my B string, and then I'll continue with my melody. So very quickly what I do is I drag to B, and I even hit my E string, and then I come back to B really quickly. What you have to do to get the desired effect is do a rest stroke on B, so you land on E and stop for just a millisecond before playing E with a down pick, and come back to the B string with an up pick, and then a down pick on the G string to continue your melody. And it comes out like this. Now I left it in the tab because it's cool, but I took it out of my recording because this was one of the elements that was too hard. It didn't make it an easy tab anymore when I included this, so I took that out. And I was having trouble myself getting it right in a recording, so I just took it right out. But you could do it as an option, especially if you're not trying to make a perfect recording. Okay, so that would go. See, it sounds pretty cool if you could do it. So this next little chord, I'm going to finger it with my first and third finger, so I can continue with my melody while holding that, using my middle finger and my fourth finger to handle the melody above that. Pretty self-explanatory there. Then there's a little D arpeggio. And we're back to a similar figure here with a hammer on. And my weird G fingering. Now this is one of the most challenging parts. This is what took me the most tries to get right in my recordings. Most of my first recordings ended right here. So what you have to do is form a C major 7 chord, and the first tricky bit is you have to do a hammer on and pull off on the B string on the first fret is tricky to do on a steel string guitar. It's just hard to get that pull off there with all the tension on the string. Using the same finger and still holding the chord, I play my G string on second fret. It's my A note. So I get holding that, actually not holding that, I'm going to take that out and play open G, and then I'm going to form this D chord. So that all happens very quickly. Grab those two notes with your first finger, open it up, and while you're playing that open G, form the next chord. And then here is a challenge too. You have to do a pinky hammer on and pull off from the 4th fret on the D string to the 5th and back. Now this is actually an element you could take out. In fact, both the hammer on pull offs in that section you could take right out. So instead of going, you could actually just go. So I took out the hammer on pull offs. I just played the main note. So you take out those little tiny notes that I wrote in there. So after I do my hammer on and pull off on my 3rd and 4th finger, I form an E minor chord, pluck it, and I'm going to hammer onto this note A here. So that whole chunk, use the first finger twice, grab my 3rd and 4th finger, hammer on pull off, and do my hammer on the E chord. Next part, what I have to do is use my pinky finger to get this F sharp. And what I can do now is I can slide into position for my C chord, which also has this G note up here. And just like earlier in the tune, you hold the C chord as long as you can and try to maneuver around it. This 1-0 here, I'm going to do a pull off on. And then another hammer on the open and second open G string followed by the 2nd fret. I can do it with my 3rd finger because I need to land an E minor chord right after. So that was pull off, 3rd finger. Okay, now this part is really weird. I wanted to get this effect where I get this nice lush D slash chord, D slash F sharp chord. But to execute the open 1 and then the chord, I found 2 ways to do it, and I settled on this one in my video. I just play my 4th finger on the 1st fret, which is super weird because my hand is up in the machine heads here. But then I bring that up with a slide and it keeps the sound going, and then I can grab the D slash F sharp chord. Pretty tricky to get right, especially after all the tricky stuff that comes before. But you can also use your middle finger and then just jump into the next chord. I also tried that. I actually ended up settling on that after a while, but then I made my video the next day and I actually just forgot to do it. So I ended up doing this one. So 2 solutions there. We end it pretty similar to how we began with a hammer on. Next part, I'm gonna do a little A power chord and then turn it into a nice A major chord. And this one, I have to do this B power chord with these fingers, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, while barring. To get that last part, because I'm going to play the power chord, keep my bar there, play the 2nd fret, and then close it off, eventually coming to this B major chord. Now, you do have to start with a bar, which is hard, just to get that 2. But as soon as you get your 4th finger in there, the bar is no longer necessary and you can take that out. Alright, so I hope that makes my easy tab a little easier. I did change the key and put it in 1st position so that it would be overall easy. But there were just a few things in there that made it more challenging, and I hope that this lesson video sort of brought it down to an easier level if it was a little challenging. Good luck.